All right, so let's say you're thinking about opening up a restaurant, right? You can practically smell the delicious food, hear the sounds of the dining room, but before you even get to designing the menu, there's something else you absolutely have to get right. Location, location, location.
Couldn't agree more. Choosing the right spot for your restaurant can make or break it. Seriously, it's a make or break decision.
It's true. And that's where this Menu Fuel blog post we're diving into comes in. How to choose a good location for your restaurant in Newcastle. They cover so much good stuff here, from understanding the vibe of different neighborhoods in Newcastle to navigating the legal ins and outs, and even those hidden costs that tend to pop up.
And I like how they really get into the why. It's not just about finding a busy street. It's more nuanced than that. It's about finding the right location for your specific restaurant.
Right. Just because there are tons of people walking by doesn't mean they're going to be your customers. Like they say, foot traffic is king, but context is queen. You could have lines out the door, but if it's not the right crowd for your food and what you're going for, it's not going to mean success in the long run.
Exactly. Imagine, say, opening a fancy seafood place in the middle of a student area, the kind of place known for late-night pizza. You might get some curious students wandering in, but it's not going to be their go-to spot for a birthday dinner or anything.
For sure. And speaking of different areas, this blog post breaks down 4 main spots in Newcastle. The city center, Jesmond, Alsburn, and the Quayside. Each of these has its own character, It's important to know which one fits your restaurant's brand.
It's like choosing the right actors for a movie. You need that perfect fit.
I like that. Okay, so let's start with the city center, the heart of Newcastle. You've got it all there. Tourists, shoppers, people coming from work, the whole mix. But, and you can probably guess what I'm going to say, prime real estate equals prime prices.
It always comes down to the return on your investment, right? Think about it like this. The city center, especially during big events like the Christmas market, it's like having your restaurant's commercial on primetime TV. You'll be paying top dollar, but the potential is huge.
Then you got Jesmond, which has a different feel, more trendy, up and coming. It's younger, a lot of students, a real social scene, lots of those trendy bars, those Instagrammable brunch spots, that kind of thing.
Jesmond is all about that youthful energy. Fast casual concepts would do well here. Street food trends, dishes that people just have to share online.
Stop. Now I'm getting hungry. But Jesmond has a lot of competition, right? New places opening all the time. It's that saying. If you can make it there, you can make it anywhere.
100%. You need to stand out, right? A strong brand, something unique that makes you special, and of course, delicious food. Can't forget about the food.
Now, if Jesmond is the trendy spot, Alsburn's more the artsy type, up and coming with tons of potential. It feels like it's on the verge of something really cool.
Right. It used to be industrial, and now it's this hub for creativity. And food. More and more foodie places opening up all the time. It's the kind of place that attracts people who are into independent businesses, locally sourced food, that alternative vibe.
I bet you could find some incredible restaurant spaces there. Imagine, like, a converted warehouse, exposed brick, Edison bulbs, serving a menu with locally sourced ingredients. That would be amazing.
Oh, absolutely. That kind of place would fit right in. But you have to keep in mind, it's still changing and growing. The foodie scene is growing, yeah, but it's not at the level of, say, the city center or Jesmond. Not yet, at least.
So it's a bit of a gamble, but maybe a big payoff later on, like investing in a new company, right? Might not make you rich overnight, but if it takes off.
Exactly. To choose Alsburn, you have to believe in it, be willing to be part of its growth.
And last but not least, we have the Quayside. This is the sophisticated one, right on the waterfront, Newcastle's VIP section.
It's all about those river views, the upscale places, that sophisticated vibe. It attracts a certain crowd, people with expensive taste, romantic dinners, special occasions, that kind of thing.
We have to be real, though. The Quayside is going to cost you. You're paying a premium for those views and that address.
Definitely, rents there are going to be high. But that also means you can have higher prices. People are willing to pay more for the experience, especially with those quayside views.
It's like buying a luxury car, right? You're paying for the status, the whole package.
It's true. And to do well in a place like that, you need your restaurant to be just as impressive as the location. The food, the service, the decor, it all has to scream high end.
So we've talked about 4 very different areas, each special in its own way. But before you picture your restaurant in any of these spots, there's one more crucial thing we need to talk about.
The legal stuff. It's not as fun as dreaming about menus and decor, but it's just as important, if not more. You don't want to get tripped up by a zoning issue right before you're ready to open.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in the excitement of it all, But zoning and licenses are definitely things you don't want to leave until the last minute.
Not a chance. Zoning laws are kind of like the rules of the game, right? They tell you what you can and can't do in a particular area, and they can be surprisingly specific.
Right.
Like, you might find this cute little spot perfect for a bistro, but then you find out the zoning doesn't allow outdoor seating. Or maybe you can't even serve alcohol there. Throws a wrench in the works, right?
Definitely. Good thing this blog post points those things out. And speaking of things that can trip people up the alcohol license, seems like that's a big one for new restaurant owners.
It sure is, and it's not as simple as just getting a license for the restaurant. At least one person on your staff needs to have a personal alcohol license, too. So you're not just thinking about hiring a good bartender. You're also thinking about the extra cost of them having that license.
That's a good point. It's like you find the perfect oven for your kitchen, but then you realize it needs a special type of electrician to install it. Not a deal breaker, but definitely something to keep in mind.
Exactly. And while we're talking about things to keep in mind, let's talk about the lease. That document is important. It's the foundation of your whole business.
It's true. You can't just skim over the lease.
Right. And this blog post really hits on that. Treat it like a business deal, not just something you sign without thinking.
Don't be afraid to negotiate.
Exactly. Know what you're worth, and don't be afraid to ask for what you need. Before you even start talking numbers, do your research. See what other places in the area are paying for rent.
Especially in Newcastle, right? There's a lot of competition for those good spots.
Oh, yeah. And you know what's a pro tip? When you're looking at the lease, pay close attention to how rent increases work. Ideally, you want it tied to some kind of formula so it's predictable. You don't want your landlord to just be able to raise the rent on a whim.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like negotiating with your food suppliers, right? You want to make sure you're getting good prices and that they're not going to suddenly jack up the cost of ingredients on you.
Exactly. Speaking of costs, don't forget about those sneaky hidden ones, the ones that can really catch you off guard. It's easy to focus on the big things like renovations and equipment, but those smaller recurring costs, those add up fast.
Oh, I know what you mean. It's like you find a great apartment, but then you realize there's a huge monthly fee for the gym or something.
Right. And this blog post talks about that service charges. A lot of multi-tenant buildings have them. It covers things like cleaning, security, that kind of thing. Make sure you know exactly what those charges include and how they're calculated.
And then there are business rates on top of that, like property taxes, but for your restaurant.
And don't forget about waste disposal. Restaurants produce a lot of garbage, which means higher costs. Factor that in.
So much to think about.
Yeah.
It's really about being prepared, right?
Exactly. Expect the best, but be ready for anything. Now, shifting gears a little bit, let's talk about the future. Newcastle is changing so fast these days. What's considered a prime location now might be totally different a few years down the line.
That's a good point.
This blog post mentions that too. Don't just think about the now, think about the future of the location. Is the area getting better, new development happening, or is it the kind of place that might not be doing so well a few years from now?
It's like choosing a place to plant a garden, right? You want good soil, plenty of sun, space to grow.
I like that analogy. Do your research. What's in the works for that area?
Yeah.
New housing, transportation, new businesses, all of that will impact your restaurant in the long run.
Imagine you find the perfect spot for your quiet cafe, and then bam, a huge shopping mall pops up right across the street. Suddenly, everything's different.
Exactly. That's why it's smart to have some flexibility built into your lease. Can you get a bigger space later if you need to?
What if things don't go as planned, Can you get out of the lease if you need to? Important stuff.
It's like you wouldn't climb a mountain without the right gear, right? You need gear that's going to keep you safe, but also gives you options if you need to change your route or even turn back. You can't be stuck with gear that's not right for the situation.
This whole conversation has been eye-opening, seriously. We've covered so much. Foot traffic, who your customers are, zoning laws, leases. But there's something else, something we haven't really touched on, something that's not always about facts and figures.
You mean like intuition, that gut feeling?
Exactly. You can look at numbers all day, but sometimes you just have to trust your gut.
Right. It's about being in that space and thinking, can I picture my restaurant here? Can I see it?
Yeah.
Can you almost hear it? The sounds of people enjoying themselves, the clinking glasses. Does it feel right?
So here's one last thought before we wrap things up. Once you've looked at all the practical stuff, made your lists and all that.
Right, done your homework.
Spend some time in each location. Really get a feel for the place.
Don't just drive by. Walk around, check out the shops, maybe sit in a cafe for a bit. Really immerse yourself.
Imagine your ideal customer. Are they there? Do they look like they belong in that neighborhood? Does the energy of the place match what you're going for?
Trust your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. And on the other hand, if you walk into a place and you just know, if you can almost taste it, that feeling of success, that's a good sign.
Because opening a restaurant, it's not just about following a checklist. It's about passion. It's about creating something you believe in and
Right.
finding the right location. It's about finding the place where your vision can really come to life.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Best of luck out there, and we can't wait to see what you create.